Welcome to the Real Chili Podcast.
And the Golden Eagles of Marquette University in Milwaukee are bound for the Final Four for only the third time ever.
5 seconds left. Marquette down by one, trying to avoid the upset. Blue the drive, the left hand. It's good. 1 second to play. Vander Blue has put Marquette in front by one.
And I want to win every day as basketball players, as students, and I want to win every day, most importantly, as people.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Real Chili Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender. I'm here with Pete Mohan and Pete Worth. The Petes are in the building to help us go over what was supposed to be a celebratory pod. Marquette played in the championship final of the Orlando Invitational this afternoon. And fellas, we were absolutely throttled by number 5, Maryland. It was ugly in the first half. We held our own in the second half, but boy, that was a beating that we took at the hands of a really good Maryland team.
Yeah, we were outclassed pretty much all the way, and the number one reason for it, obviously, was Marcus Howard scored 91 points in the previous two games, and he went down to 6.
That's correct.
That's it.
1 to 12 shooting.
All right, this has been the Real Chili Podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah.
I think that it was exactly what we hoped was not a possible outcome of Marcus Howard offense against a good opponent. You know, this basically shows the textbook way to defend him from here on out for the rest of the season. If you have the personnel to pull it off, then it makes it very difficult for Marquette to have any kind of coherent offense. Pretty much our savior that kept this from being a 40-point loss was Brendan Bailey, who put up a stunning 27 points, kind of the Brendan Bailey that we hoped might show up. Sakar played well too, but that was just because there was zero Marcus. 6 points in 32 minutes, and it's just a shame when that's what, it's the best you can expect from your star player in a matchup of this caliber.
Maryland obviously is a very good team, very deep team, and talented team. They're number 5 in the country for a reason. But what defending Marcus Howard takes is want to, and like you said, Pete, depth. Like you need to want and have the desire and have the energy to deny him the ball anytime he doesn't have it. And they did a really good job of that. And then, Marcus gets in this mode where, well, I'm not scoring right now. I need to start scoring. I need to do anything I possibly can to do that. And I start taking bad shots. And then that kind of unravels the entire offense.
There were, without a doubt, Pete Mohan, as you mentioned, silver linings to this game. And we'll talk more about Brendan Bailey and Sakar. I think we saw some good minutes from Jace Johnson. That was impressive in spots there, getting some big boards. But to both of your points, and specifically you, Pete Worth, Maryland had the horses to defend Marcus, and they clearly had the motivation to. All they had heard about throughout this tournament was Marcus Howard, and they showed up. The broadcasters, no matter what you will say about Dockich and co., they pointed out how fired up Maryland was in this game, and they took that out on Marcus Howard. Here's my question for you, though. If you're Steve Wojciechowski and you're in the offseason, you're in this past offseason, it has to be blatantly obvious to you and to the rest of the coaching staff that this is going to be the problem, right? If people can shut Marcus down, then the rest of the team is going to have offensive problems. What concerns me is that we don't seem to have any anecdote to get Marcus open in a situation. I understand it was good defense, but how do we not have something in the playbook that can get him open with a little more regularity?
Well, nobody wants to hear this, and we've almost put like a blacklist on the word Hauser. But I mean, that's how we got him open, and that's why Wojo's having such a tough time, because people can sag off the rest of the team, because we don't have other offensive weapons now. Bailey and Sakar played well today, but when you're so limited, on the offensive end from guys that can create their own shot, and Kobe McEwen's been nowhere to be found the last, this entire tournament, then other teams are okay with focusing all of their energy on Marcus and saying, all right, let's, other guys beat us, hit that shot, take it, on us. As long as Marcus Howard doesn't have the ball in his hands, we're fine with that.
To me, the biggest disappointment and overall this season is basically the disappearance of Theo John and Ed Morrow. And, you mentioned Jace Johnson had a good game. I think he had 11 rebounds and really played with hustle and grit in this one. But Theo and Ed have just been absolutely nowhere to be found. Terrible rebounding yet again between the two of them. 3 combined rebounds between Ed and Theo in 21 combined minutes. And
it seems that anytime Ed touches the ball, it's a turnover.
Yes.
Right. I think literally call them Gulliver's Travels or, Magellan, I think you call them at one point. That's the only thing that he can do is travel.
Yeah, and that's
frustrating.
That's literally not an embellishment either. Like every time he gets the ball, he turns it over. Yeah. That is true.
We need a Ken Palm column here for travel rate. And I think that Ed would be number 1 in the nation.
Yeah, I think he would.
But it's just you would have hoped that there would be opportunity for those guys as role men going to the hoop. But they haven't threatened anyone's defense at all this year. And as a result, it allows defenses to push out on the perimeter and defend the 3 better because we have no offensive threat at the hoop unless it's Sakar or Kobe or Marcus maybe driving. But that's really the only offense that we've gotten near the rim this year.
Right. And the big guys can't, they're not an outside threat either. So even if they're setting high ball screens up the top of the key, they're not a threat to shoot. So teams can, focus all on our guards in that regard too. And
I need to watch some Matt Helt film on how to roll the hoop.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and then even our guards getting the post guys the ball, like our post entry passes are horrible. Like
we can't even get them the ball for the last couple of years.
Yeah, we have. Yeah. For sure.
And it's like, oh, well, maybe things will be different. But no, clearly that is something that inability in Wojo to coach that into these guys. It's disappointing to me.
I think it's worth pointing out, and, it was said at the top, but this is clearly a very, very good Maryland team. They were deep. I felt like all those guys were switchable, and they were just all big, athletic, could handle the ball. While you look at their overall field goal percentage from this game, it doesn't blow you away. But in watching the game, it felt like every time they needed a bucket or needed a run, they got one. And it was so frustrating to watch because Marquette was helpless to stop them, gave up 84 points. So there's this piece of this where, yes, Maryland is clearly very good. Very few teams we played this year are going to be of that caliber. So we can take some solace in that. But what you both just pointed out is we're not getting good interior play. When we face higher caliber teams or are, tested in a road game environment or in a neutral court environment, we have trouble getting contributions from everyone. So whether it's against Maryland or not, the flaws for this team exist. And this is year 6 of the Wojo era. I don't think you can look at this game in and of itself and say it's damning on Wojo. But what we have now is what we've got. And, to me, this is really reflective on the coach. And we don't need to dive into that. We can dive into it later if we want to. But it leaves me worried about the remainder of this season because I feel like there's a ceiling that can only go so high because it depends so much on the development of those people who wing or front court. It feels like we know what they are, right? It feels like we know what Ed Morrow is and what Theo is. It feels like we know what Jamal and Greg are. Are we going to see that much of a change from these guys?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't really see it. These are athletic, talented individuals that, when I say these guys, I'm talking about, Brendan, Sakar, Jamal, Kobe, and Greg, I guess, the rest of our backcourt. They're not natural. They don't have anything that stands out that they do really well. What this team is really missing from the backcourt is a distributor, like a creative ball handler that can beat his man off the dribble, and not including Marcus, but will make good plays and is looking to get his teammates involved. Like we thought Kobe might kind of be that guy, but he's really fallen off since the Purdue second half. And so we fall into these lulls where everybody kind of does the same things, like, okay, but the ball sticks. We don't have what we did in the USC game finally, where the Marcus kind of got everybody rolling and the ball was moving well around the perimeter. And different people got open looks and hit shots and build that confidence. But when Marcus kind of struggles out of the gate, everybody seems to kind of take that lead and try to take over that lack of scoring themselves, and the ball just doesn't move well. I kind of took that in a different direction than what the original question was, but I just have a hard time seeing. It'd be great if that improves, and we luckily, like, that USC game showed a little glimpse of it. I don't think that we will be able to continue that in games where Marcus struggles.
Well, I think your point about the ball sticking is a good one, because it kind of jumps off the page, because it does feel like there are moments where it's almost clear that Wojo has said to these guys, hey, you need to step up. You need to contribute more. Take your chances. And what that actually turns into is them doing stupid things more often than not making smart basketball decisions. I thought, just thinking back to the game today against Maryland, we're recording this on Sunday night, I thought for the first time we saw Brendan Bailey take a significant step forward. And it wasn't because he hit down, he registered, 27 points and did a number of things. I thought he made a number of plays, getting to the hoop where he could have taken an outside shot, finishing at the hoop where he hadn't done that before. And he was doing that against elite competition. Was it enough to make a difference in the game? Hell no. But those are the type of things we need to see from a second or third option. Is that going to be enough? I don't know. But when I'm looking at silver linings, I think Bailey is clearly one. Again, it's not because he shot really well from three, although that's a part of it. Sakar feels a little bit more of a mixed bag for me. A lot of those shots are ones he's been taking for the past year and a half, and today they just seem to fall.
Well, I would say the good thing about Brendan Bailey is that it seems like he found a spot on offense, that little flare, pick and roll flare that he ran a few times that he hit a shot.
Sam Hauser. The Sam Hauser shot.
That was the most in rhythm I've seen Brendan Bailey in an offensive play in this offense. And I think that's good. Those are the building blocks of an offense. And that's where I think, to your original question, Mike, and things that we've discussed before this in terms of guys developing individual skill set, that's how you build an offense. You create plays that threaten the defense and make the defense defend those things. And then you can do things off of that. So the fact that we discovered another way to threaten a defense in this game is, I think, a positive. But at the same time, something I texted you guys in the middle of the game at halftime was, what adjustments, will the staff make in order to get Marcus those open looks? And they didn't have the answer. And you thought even maybe that Maryland's defense might slow down a little bit or get a little tired by the end, but they were right there with them, and there didn't seem to be much adaptation on the part of the offense to generate those looks. So that's disappointing. But like I said, we're still getting those individual blooming moments, if you will, from some of these younger guys that haven't seen a lot of floor time. And until they find that little spot on the court that they're comfortable with, or that one shot or two shots, whatever it is that they're comfortable taking, then, those are the incremental steps that need to happen before this offense ultimately is comfortable together.
it felt like there were stretches in the second half. Check me on this. It felt like there were stretches in the second half where Marcus sat out for longer than he normally would have. Mm-hmm. And my read of it in the moment was Wojo knows this game is probably lost, and he's trying to keep these guys in there, everyone except for Marcus, just to see who steps up. Did anybody else see that, or was I just making that up? It felt like it was more than, all right, Marcus, get a blow, 50 seconds before the under 8 timeout.
Well, it wasn't just that. Marcus was our least efficient shooter on the court this entire game, and we happened to go on runs when the other guys were on offense.
Yeah. And he got his third foul, I think, pretty early in the second half too. But I think it's a good point, Mike. I hadn't thought of that, and it's very well possible that there was a little bit of that crossing his mind. But yeah, my biggest question now going forward is, will we see this again from Brendan Bailey and Sakar, or against whoever we play next, or Kansas State? Well, we play Jacksonville, I think, next, and then so Kansas State is our next big, high major opponent. Mm-hmm. Will we get those two complementary scorers? We don't know. We just don't know. Sakar should be that guy, but he's kind of starting to take form a little bit, the last couple of games. But I mean, I'm not expecting him to go out there and getting 15 points. Yeah. And Bailey, the same thing. Who knows?
This team will get 5 extra possessions a game if they just clean up their footwork a little bit. Just cut out 5 travels a game, and those are 5 shots that you get to put into your offense that you can that you might score a point of possession. That's 5-point difference. That can be a huge difference in the course of a game. So I understand that there's going to be turnovers in the course of an offense, but for it to be on these terribly annoying little things that, fundamentals they should be, entry passes, lazy perimeter passes, travels. And a lot of them too are that, the play where the guy is so wide open in the corner and he is telegraphing that he's going to make that pump fake and drive. Mm-hmm. And they call that false step travel, on the wing.
Greg Elliott did that once today.
Exactly. And you have to adapt. The refs are calling that super tight this year.
I used to call that the Wes Matthews special. But he got better at it by the time his senior year rolled around. But he used to do that all the time.
Well, Marquette is according to Ken Palm, one of the worst turnover team offenses in the country, 262nd out of 353. So certainly not one of the stronger points.
And not just that, on non-steal turnovers, we are 292nd in the country. 12% of our possessions end in a non-steal turnover. It's just absurd.
So, Pete Worth, you mentioned just a minute ago the schedule going forward. Marquette has Jacksonville next on Wednesday, December 4th. And as you pointed out, Kansas State is our only remaining kind of high major game before the start of Big East play. And it's at Kansas State. So I think that road game will be an important test to see what they take away from this game if Brendan Bailey can continue to progress, because the likes of Grambling State, North Dakota State, and Central Arkansas aren't going to be that litmus test that we need to have before playing Creighton at Creighton on January 1st. Now, a couple more things that I think it'll be important for us to cover before we wrap up here. I do want to give Jace Johnson a little more than just kind of a passing shoulder shrug. I'm not necessarily a Dan Dockich fan, but I agreed with Dockich in the fact that Jace Johnson stepped on the court and clearly differentiated himself. He ended up with 19 minutes. Theo ended with 10. Ed with 11. It was clear to Wojo. It was clear if you were watching this game that Jace was playing with the most whatever he needed to be playing with. He was grabbing boards. He was finding a way to get his hands on the ball and make a difference. He drew a couple of fouls. I was impressed. Jace clearly has not shown that he has any offensive skill set. When he does, it's rushed and it doesn't look right. That can be okay in stretches considering the offensive weapons we have. But I was impressed with Jace. Whether he can put that together, I think that'll be a big question. But some solid minutes from him today.
Yeah, he proved himself worthy of a scholarship for sure, because we've gotten guys like this, big bodies that come semi highly touted, and we expect big things from them. Harry Froling comes to mind, but he proved himself a legit D1 center today. I mean, he wasn't only grabbing rebounds, he was snatching them, I would say, with
wrestling them away
with some tenacity, and that's what we need, especially with Theo struggling so mightily lately.
Yeah, it's great to see Jace contributing. Definitely a welcome addition, and glad that he came back from injury and looks pretty healthy out there. I will just say the big picture so far, and we saw excellent performances from Marcus in the first two games of this tournament. We have to bring that up.
Yeah.
But here's the difference. We're 5-2. 5 games Marcus has played well. We've won. 2 games he hasn't. We've lost.
What define play well?
Scored 40.
Shot more than 40% or whatever. He was 6 for 21 against Wisconsin, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm not criticizing. I'm asking for the people out there just to make sure we got it on there.
Right. Well, I think if you looked at his overall shooting percentage in the 2 losses versus the 5 wins, there would be dramatic difference, and of course in the scoring points per game as well. But we need to understand that he is really the motor of this team. And look, it's nice to see the development from these secondary guys, and it is important, but our best offense is getting good shots for Marcus Howard, one of the most talented offensive players in the country and one of the most talented scorers in the last decade. Finding ways to get him shots is the best offense that Marquette has, and it theoretically could be the best offense in the Big East if it was clicking the right way. So we need to figure out what that is, what the foolproof way to get him shots, because like you said, he wasn't on the court for as many minutes as he normally would, but still only 12 field goals for Marcus Howard. And that's too few, in my opinion. He's got to be shooting 20 times a game just because he is that threat. And if he had gotten those 8 extra shots in earlier, who knows, maybe he would have heated up by the end that could have made this thing a little tighter. So we need to find ways to get him the ball. And despite this excellent defense that we saw from Maryland, there needs to be some kind of an answer.
In the second half, Steve Wojciechowski and the coaching staff made the decision to go to a zone defense. And if you're looking at the Ken Palm, win probability graph with the red line, you'll notice that at about the 13-minute mark in the second half, there was ever so slightly a blip of life from Marquette. And I think that was associated with really great shooting from Brendan Bailey and a couple nice plays from others. But it was that zone defense in the second half which really even left the door slightly ajar for Marquette to make a run. It's a little, I can't play Monday morning quarterback. I don't know why it took so long to make that switch when very clearly in the first half our man-to-man defense was not cutting it. So some questions there. But there was a little blip of life in the second half for that zone defense, and I thought they played it well when Wojo asked them to.
Yeah, I think they played it well. It was definitely a move of desperation.
Sure.
And I don't foresee them going to it very often going forward. They're not going to play a team as capable as Maryland, or too many teams as capable of Maryland with as good of kind of as versatile as all that entire roster is really. Mm-hmm. That being said, I mean, they did play it well. They forced them into taking some bad threes and to turning the ball over a few times, but Maryland's a good team. They eventually kind of figured it out. They got it in the middle, and it looked like, nobody had their hands up. So for a lot of those possessions, like they played it really well at the beginning, and then kind of once Maryland started to figure it out, they got the ball in the middle, and they literally had wide open looks like 5 feet away from the basket in the lane, and like nobody even like went out to guard the guy or even put their hands up. So it was like that's basic fundamental zone defense. So, I mean, I think it was a good move. And it worked out well for a little bit, but it was kind of, it was a desperate move and one that we kind of had to do. And I don't really see it, being a huge part of our game plan going forward.
I do think that it says one other thing is that Wojo understands. I mean, that's not an uncommon move for any coach to make, I guess, in the midst of trailing by that much. But I think that Wojo also understands that with the roster makeup that he has and to get the most out of the non-Marcus Howard players, that they have to be defensive playmakers. And we need to force the issues and make the difference in the game come from, aggressive defense or well-positioned defense. But defense has to be a weapon for us if we're going to be a successful team this year. And so I like that he's utilizing that. I don't know how much of it was what I just said or just, the move of desperation, like you mentioned, Mike. But I do think that moving forward, we have to look to our defense to carry us in certain moments to get us over the hump.
Well, that's what was so beautiful about that USC game and that huge run, like when we kind of pushed it, got out to the lead and then pushed it to 30. A big part of that was hello, transition points.
Yeah.
Whoa, where did those come from? That is so rare on this team the last couple of years. And we actually were pushing the ball and making the right play in transition, making the right pass or taking it right to the basket if the lane allows it. And that was like, man,
it was
just really want to see more of that.
Well, it was impressive enough that it got a tweet from Jay Billis, a really flabbergasted, impressed tweet from Jay Billis, specifically about Marquette. So, for what it's worth.
Thanks, Jay.
Thanks, Jay. So, at this point in the season, as was mentioned, Marquette is 5-2. Our 2 losses are against grade A teams, according to Ken Palm's ranking system. So, if we're going to have losses, they're against 2 teams, at least at this point in the season, that is, from a resume standpoint, okay to have losses too. But I'll tell you what, those 2 losses sure have posed a lot of problems in the fact that they were both blowouts and really kind of had the same recipe for what the problem with this team is. I think it's safe to say that if we do not identify a second and third consistent scorer, the Big East is no lightweight this year, and we're going to have a really tough run of it if we can't identify that person. So on that happy note, we're going to wrap it up here today.
Geez.
Go ahead, Pete.
No, I was just going to say – were you going to say?
No, you're the optimistic one out of the 3 of us, so I'm going to let you close it out.
Some might say to the point of ignorance, but so you mentioned the stretch, the remaining non-conference stretch coming up with Kansas State really being at Kansas State being the toughest out of those. And I'm really eager to see I don't think that any of the other 4 teams will have the defense to shut down Marcus Howard between Jacksonville, Grambling, North Dakota State, Central Arkansas. None of those teams probably has the firepower defensively to lock down Marcus. But Kansas State, they allowed Marcus to put up 45 on him last year. So they got plenty of tape. And then they have tape from Maryland and Wisconsin, how to frustrate him this year. So I'm really looking forward to the game next Saturday to see what Marquette does to keep Marcus free and get him going and get him in rhythm heading into the Big East season. I don't know about you guys.
Well, I can say that I'm excited to see what it looks like. I know Bruce Weber is the head coach at Kansas State, and
Pete loves him.
Oh, yeah.
Kansas State is currently on a 2-game losing streak and plays.
Or should I say, sure do love Bruce.
All right. Well, with that, I think we're going to wrap up for today. I don't have anything for the junk drawer. Been a long weekend, a great Thanksgiving weekend, but anything from you guys for the junk drawer?
I just have a shout out to my new friends, Kevin O'Hara. I apologize. I don't know his wife's name. I forgot it. I apologize. But the couple that recognized my voice at Starved Rock when me and my wife were on a hike, and they asked us to take a picture of them. I saw you had a Marquette hat on. He said, "Hey, your voice sounds familiar." I said, "Do you listen to the Real Chili podcast?" And he said, "Yes, I sure do." And then now my wife says, "God, I can't take you anywhere."
Here's the question for you. That not only is that a great story, when he said, "I recognize your voice somewhere," was the Real Chili podcast the first words out of your mouth, or was there something else?
Well, he's like a year behind us in school, so I just figured maybe we knew each other somehow.
That's what sports show, maybe.
yeah. And then Corey was looking at me. Corey, my wife, was looking at me, and she's like, "Are you not going to ask him if he listens to the podcast?" I was like, "Oh yeah." Like, "You listen to the Real Chili podcast?" He's like, "Yeah, I listen to all of them." I was like, "Oh, sweet."
And what's his name? Kevin O'Hara.
Kevin O'Hara, and his wife. Right. Sorry, Mrs. O'Hara. I forgot your name.
Scarlett.
I feel bad about that. Yeah.
Well, thank you to Kevin and his wife, and thank you to all of our listeners. Are either 3,000 or 5,000 or 7. Pete Mohan actually checked. We're up closer to 9,000 as opposed to 5,000. So somewhere between 3,000 and 9,000.
Putting that broadband to the test with all those downloads.
Oh, I have one more quick thing. Who are those 3 bald dudes that look like brothers, or they look like they were like President Lovell's like trashy younger brothers that like flamed out. Those guys, they're at the game today.
I know who
kept on showing them on TV. The one dude had like the old 77.
Oh yeah. Who was that?
I don't know.
I bet they live in Florida.
No, someone one of the announcers said there's some former players in the house.
They said former player, and then they showed this guy, but then they also started talking about the fashion of the uniforms for like 5 fucking minutes. So.
Oh, yeah, maybe they're just talking about the uniforms. He kind of looked like if you fused Jay Billis and Michael Lovell, the main guy.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he stood up and got pissed about a call at one point.
Yeah.
That was a big
deal. So if you guys are, once we tweet this episode out, and you listen to it, make sure to come back and if you know who those guys are, just reply to us so we can find.
Make a wanted poster.
Let us know so we can sleep at night, please. Yep. All right. Signing off for this episode of the Real Chili podcast. I'm your host, Mike Lavender, signing off for Pete Mohan and Pete Worth. Thanks as always for listening, and we'll be back with you soon later this week as we gear up for Kansas State. For tuning in to the Real Chili podcast. We'll talk to you next time.
Bring one out.
Drive safely in the snow out there.